Today, I wanted to invite us into a short reflection on the behavior of sheep. There is this sort of cultural myth that we have that sheep are stupid and that they don't always follow directions, and sometimes they do things that are against their self interest. And sometimes that is true. It is also true, they have learned that sheep can be trained. They can be trained to carry packs, they can be trained to respond to sounds. Sheep can recognize the humans who take care of them and recognize the different humans who take care of them and do different jobs for them. And sheep can even learn their own names. They can learn the sound of their names in the ways that dogs and cats can do. One of the most interesting things that I learned about sheep this week is that they are together in a flock. And so you might have noticed that our gospel reading in John talks about both a flock and a fold. A flock is a group of sheep that are out on a hillside or in a pasture or on a mountain, and they are roaming around and they are freely grazing. The fold is when sheep are all in a sheep pen together with fences and boundaries around the area that they have. And so it is interesting if you know that when you go back and read our gospel lesson from John to see the differences of those things. But today I want to invite us to really just focus on the flock, the sheep that are out and grazing. And there is an interesting thing that happens when the sheep are out in the pastures and grazing. As they are grazing, they spread out and they go around to the edges of the pasture. And then they have specifically observed this in merino sheep. Maybe some of you have merino wool sweaters from them. They are in France, and these merino sheep. They have been studying them and they suspect this behavior is also true of other sheep, but they don't have the veterinary research yet to be able to prove that. But one of the things that they observed is that as the sheep spread out and they spread out their grazing and they go to different parts of the grass, sometimes one of the sheep, for no discernible reason that they can discover, will suddenly become very anxious that they've gotten too far away from the pack, from the flock. They will get really anxious. And so what they do when they all of a sudden get anxious is they start looking around anxiously and then they start charging. They start running as fast as they can to get as close to the middle of the group as they possibly can. And then what happens is that all of the other sheep around the edges start charging in to the middle. And then what happens is the other sheep wait until the sheep coming in from the edges all get into the middle and then they surround them. They surround them and then they form this tight little knot. And they do this because the sheep on the edge was feeling anxious, not necessarily because there was a predator. They would also do this if a wolf showed up. They would also do this if there were signs of danger. It is interesting because as humans and as people who belong to a Christian community together and as people who follow Jesus, I think that we also feel this tension between going out and grazing and being separate from the group, and then also wanting desperately to be attached to the group, wanting to be protected by the group, wanting to be cared for by the group. For some people, when they are feeling anxious or depressed or worried or disconnected, what they desperately want is for their Christian community to come around them, to surround them, to love them, to care for them, to care for the people who are the most injured or the most upset or the most hurt. Now, some of us, when we are in that state of being, also really want to be left alone. We might want people to care for us from afar or care for us without demanding that we make a response or that we get close to others or that we talk to them. It is so interesting to me that Jesus used this analogy of the flock and of bringing people into the flock. Because if we look at the behavior of sheep, bringing people into the flock is about caring for them, about protecting them, about honoring what is going on with them. If we're way out on the edge of the group and we're feeling really worried and really anxious, wouldn't it be amazing to have your Christian community surround you and care for you and support you in whatever it is that you needed? And because of the ways that Jesus additionally then goes on to define our neighbor, one of the questions that we can ask as a community is, who are the neighbors to LCMM? Who are the people in our neighborhood? Who are the people around us who are the most hurting, who are the most anxious, who most want to run headlong into the middle of our community so they can be surrounded and protected and loved and have their needs met without judgment? Because the interesting thing about this behavior of sheep is that the sheep don't look at each other and ask, does this person have a right to feel worried? Is this person have a right to feel scared? Was there an actual predator there? You know the story of the boy who cried wolf? Sheep don't do that to each other. If there's a sheep that got too separated from the group and becomes worried and wants to be surrounded by the group, whether a predator was there or not, the community, the flock of sheep, surround the sheep that is worried and take care of them and reassure them that they have security. One of the things I've noticed is that as our world is changing, people start feeling really worried that when they come back or when the world opens up again, they won't be part of a community anymore. That their voice won't be as valuable, that people won't care about meeting their needs or care about being in relationship with them. That is a worry that lots of us have, that we won't be seen and we won't be loved and cared for. But one of the things Jesus does when Jesus says that we are his flock and he is our shepherd is he promises absolutely to be there for us, to care for us, to pull us back from the brink, to get us away from the stream that's moving too fast before we fall in it, to make sure that we have green grass. But Jesus, by talking about us as a flock, also gives us this unbelievable ability to see each other, to care for each other, to protect one another. Jesus gives us the ability to create our story together. As all of the kids worked together for that video, they were able to create a story together, to share it about the ways that our faith impacts us, about the ways that we go looking for God, about the ways that we understand Jesus as our shepherd and care for one another. As we are feeling anxious about the world around us and about all of the ways that it is changing, I would invite us to lean on one another, to be about creating our story together, to be learning about the ways that we can protect each other, the ways that we can keep each other safe, the ways that we can go out of our way to meet each other's needs, the ways we can look around our world and see we have a shepherd taking care of us. Where are the sheep that don't have shepherds? Where are the sheep maybe without a flock? Where are the sheep on the edges who desperately want to come into the group and to know that not only are the sheep taking care of each other, but when they can't, the shepherd is there. The shepherd is there to love us, to see us, to acknowledge us, to deeply care for us. When Jesus says he is our good shepherd, He is inviting us to work together as a flock. He is inviting us to work together to care for those on the edges. He is inviting us to tell the flock what we need. He's inviting us to rely on Him, to guide us as a community that is all moving together forward to share the gospel with the world around us. Jesus invites us to be a flock that cares for one another, that creates our story together, and shares it with the world around us. Thanks be to God. Amen.